Sagittarius, the truth your soul already knows before the mask falls. When the soul knows before the truth arrives, there are times when the truth has not yet been spoken, yet your spirit has already recognized it. It arrives not as a thunderclap, but as a pause that lingers too long, a glance that slips away too quickly, a sentence that sounds whole yet feels empty. As a Sagittarius, you are the seeker of clarity, the wanderer whose bow is always drawn toward the horizon of truth. But there are days when the path ahead grows hazy, when the target seems hidden behind a veil of mist. In that stillness, your soul, older than this lifetime, leans forward and whispers what your mind is not ready to name. This knowing is not fear. It is the inheritance of countless journeys, the intuition that has protected you in lifetimes past and now returns to stand guard again. What lies ahead is more than uncovering someone else's secret. It is the question of whether you will choose yourself when the moment of reckoning arrives. And so we begin not in urgency but in quiet courage. As we step into this exploration together, I invite you to listen deeply, to let each insight land gently within you. If these words resonate, allow them to be a soft reminder to walk with me on this path. Share, connect, and join me here, so we may travel together into the truths your soul already holds. Gate 1. The first feeling you tried to brush away. Sagittarius, you have always been known for your generosity. Not just the kind that offers a helping hand, but the generosity of spirit that gives others the benefit of the doubt, even when your own heart is quietly unsettled. You believe in people's capacity to grow. You believe in giving them the space to explain themselves, to make mistakes, to find their way back to the truth. It is a noble quality, one that springs from your Jupiter-ruled optimism and your faith in the greater good. Yet, this very generosity can sometimes lead you into a subtle but dangerous habit, brushing away the first stirrings of discomfort within you. It happens in such small, almost invisible ways. You sense a shift in someone's tone, but you tell yourself they're just having a hard day. You notice they've avoided eye contact during a moment that mattered, but you decide not to take it personally. They cancel plans without explanation and you say maybe they're tired. Maybe I'm overthinking. That voice inside you, the one that nudges you, the one that sometimes tugs at you with a strange urgency, whispers that something is off. But you, the eternal seeker of light, turn toward rational explanations. Feels kinder. Feels easier. And so, you smooth over the ripples and convince yourself the waters are still. But here is the truth. Each time you do this, a quiet separation begins within you. It is not loud and it is not dramatic at first. It is like a candle flame that burns lower with each gust of wind you ignore. Your laughter feels just slightly more measured. Your joy becomes a little more cautious. Your trust in your own inner knowing grows a fraction weaker. And as the days pass, you may find yourself needing someone else to confirm what you once could feel without a single doubt. I have seen this pattern in many Sagittarians, perhaps because your fire is so naturally forgiving. You are not quick to shut the door. You would rather keep it open a little longer, hoping that love or loyalty or friendship will step through and reassure you that your fears were unfounded. But too often, this patience is misread as permission for others to keep taking without giving, to keep withholding without explaining, to keep dimming the connection until only the shadow of it remains. You must remember that your intuition is not an anxious voice invented by fear. It is the distilled wisdom of your soul, carried across lifetimes. Jupiter, your ruling planet, gifts you with the ability to see beyond the surface, to notice the patterns that others miss. When you first feel that quiet shift, that subtle tightening in your chest or that inexplicable heaviness in your spirit, you are reading signals in a language your soul has always understood. To brush it away is to ignore the map that has guided you through every wilderness you have ever crossed. Consider the story of Clara, a Sagittarius I once knew. She was in a relationship that on paper seemed ideal, shared values, similar dreams, a deep affection that had lasted for years. Yet, one evening in the middle of a conversation, she noticed a strange absence in her partner's gaze, as if he were there but not with her. Her heart tightened for a moment, but she brushed it away. She told herself he was simply distracted by work. Weeks passed, and that same distant look appeared again and again. Still, she rationalized, he's tired. He's stressed. This will pass. It wasn't until months later, when the truth finally surfaced, that she realized she had known all along. The cost of ignoring that first instinct was not just the heartbreak of betrayal, but the erosion of her trust in herself. You Sagittarius are the archer. Your aim is truest when you trust your first sight of the target. That initial flicker of recognition, that subtle awareness, this is your arrow's first flight. The longer you delay in honoring it, the more likely it is to be swallowed by doubt, tangled in the overthinking that comes when you seek proof from the outside instead of truth from the inside. It is important to understand that trusting your first feeling does not mean you act recklessly or without compassion. It does not mean accusing someone without listening or ending connections without reflection. What it does mean is giving that inner signal the weight it deserves. It means you pause and honor it, even if you choose not to act on it immediately. It means you stop gaslighting yourself into believing you imagine what you felt. Think of it like this. Your intuition is a companion who has walked beside you through every joy and heartbreak of your life. It has stayed awake when you fell asleep to your own needs. It has spoken to you in the quietest hours, when no one else could see the truth you carried. How long will you keep silencing this loyal guide? There will be moments when listening to that first feeling will lead you to uncomfortable places. You may learn truths you did not want to know. You may have to set boundaries that others do not understand. You may have to walk away from situations where you once felt at home. But here is the paradox. Each time you honor your inner knowing, you step deeper into your own freedom. And freedom for you is life itself. So the next time that subtle unease rises within you, do not dismiss it. Do not smother it with excuses. Hold it in your hands as you would a fragile compass in the middle of a storm. Let it point you toward the questions you need to ask, the conversations you need to have, the truths you need to face. Because the first feeling is rarely wrong. It is your soul's way of making sure you don't lose yourself in the effort to keep someone else. Gate 2. When the universe sends signs but you look away. Sagittarius, you are a fluent reader of life's symbolic language. Even when you don't consciously think about it, your spirit senses patterns, repetitions, and subtle synchronicities. A dream that repeats itself 3 nights in a row. A song you haven't heard in years suddenly playing in 2 different places in the same day. A sudden heaviness that washes over you when you stand next to someone. Though nothing in their words suggests harm, these are not random moments. They are the universe leaning in, whispering to you in a dialect your soul has always known. But here's the paradox. You are so fiercely hopeful, so unwilling to let go of what you love, that sometimes you pretend not to notice. You rewrite the signs into something softer, something less threatening. A recurring dream about standing at a locked door? Maybe it's just stress. The song that once made you cry, now appearing over and over? Coincidence? The sharp drop in your energy whenever a certain person enters the room? I'm just tired today. You tell yourself these stories not because you are naive, but because you want to preserve the world as you wish it to be, not as it is revealing itself to you. The universe is patient, Sagittarius, but it is also persistent. When you ignore the first sign, another comes, and another. The dreams grow more vivid, the encounters more unsettling, the synchronicities stack like stones, forming a cairn along your path, marking the place you keep walking past. Eventually, the message becomes too loud to deny, and when you finally see it, you often realize it had been there all along, waiting for you to stop shielding your eyes. I think of Matteo, a Sagittarius artist I once knew. He had a friend he admired deeply, someone who seemed to believe in him. Yet, over time he noticed small things. A shift in tone when Matteo spoke of his successes, an absence in the audience during important shows, a faint but unmistakable tension in their presence. He had dreams of being back in school, late for class, with that friend always a step ahead blocking the doorway. He brushed it off. But then came the day when he overheard a conversation, careless, cutting words spoken behind his back. In that moment, the dreams, the tension, the subtle unease all snapped into place. He realized the universe had been speaking to him for months. He had simply chosen not to listen. Why do we do this? Because seeing the truth often means changing something we don't want to change. It might mean letting go of a person we still love, a job we've invested years into, or a version of ourselves we've been holding on to. For you, Sagittarius, this is especially hard. You are loyal not just to people but to the story you've built with them. You want the adventure to keep going, even if the terrain has changed. And so you delay. You hope the signs are wrong. You keep walking, eyes forward, even as the universe waves its arms on the sidelines. But here's the truth the signs are trying to show you. Your intuition is not just a personal feeling. It is evidence. It is data gathered by the deepest part of you, pieced together in ways your conscious mind can't yet explain. The more you honor it, the less the universe has to shout. When you start listening to the first small nudge, you save yourself from the louder, harsher wake-up calls that will follow if you ignore it. It's worth asking yourself, what signs have I been avoiding lately? Have I been excusing someone's absence in my life, explaining away a recurring tension, or dismissing a dream that keeps returning to me? Sometimes the signs are direct, a message lost in transit, a plan that keeps falling through, a conversation that turns cold too quickly. Other times they're quiet, a certain heaviness in the morning, a moment of inexplicable sadness after seeing a person, an image that appears again and again in your mind. Sagittarius, your gift is not just in noticing these signs, but in having the courage to follow where they lead. This doesn't mean abandoning people at the first sign of discomfort. It means letting the signs become part of your decision-making, honoring them as you would any other truth. The archer does not shoot blindly. Your arrows are guided by the winds and the landscape, by the subtle cues that tell you where your target truly is. The universe's signs are part of that wind, part of that unseen map. When you choose to look away, you are not just delaying the truth, you are delaying your own alignment. You keep yourself in places where your energy drains, where your light dims, where your spirit quietly contracts. And the longer you stay, the harder it is to remember what it feels like to be fully alive. But when you choose to see, really see the signs as they come, you step into a different rhythm with the universe. The messages become less about warnings and more about guidance. You begin to notice the signs that lead you toward joy, expansion, and genuine connection. You start trusting that the same universe that warns you away from harm will also lead you toward beauty. The next time a sign comes, don't rush past it. Pause. Ask yourself what it's trying to tell you. Write it down. Reflect on it for a few days. If it repeats, listen harder. And if it grows louder, know that it's because your soul is asking you to stop pretending not to know. Because you do know, Sagittarius. You have always known. The only question is whether you will honor that knowing before the mask falls. Gate 3. When love is not love but a silk cage. Sagittarius, you are a creature of freedom. Your spirit thrives when it can roam across landscapes, ideas, and experiences. You are not reckless. You simply understand that the soul is not meant to live in a box. Yet, there are times when what you think is love turns out to be something far more delicate and far more dangerous. A silk cage. It doesn't come with locked doors or harsh commands. It comes wrapped in tenderness and concern, in the quiet insistence that you stay safe or slow down for your own good. First, it feels comforting, even protective. But over time, you begin to notice the walls closing in, not built from cruelty, but from a love that fears your wings. This kind of cage is tricky because it doesn't hurt you in obvious ways. The person may genuinely care for you. They may not even realize what they're doing. They might cheer for your dreams and words, while subtly steering you away from the parts of them that scare them. Your boldness, your independence, your hunger for the unknown. They may say, I just don't want you to get hurt, or I think you should be more realistic. You tell yourself they mean well. And maybe they do. But intention does not erase impact. And the impact here is that you start to shrink piece by piece until you fit into the shape they can handle. For Sagittarius, this is particularly dangerous because you are adaptable. You can adjust your path without losing sight of your long-term vision. At least, that's what you tell yourself. You say, I can wait. I can make do. I can pause this dream for now. And while you wait, something subtle happens. The pause stretches longer. Your dreams lose their urgency, and the wide-open horizon you once aimed for becomes a picture on the wall instead of a path beneath your feet. I remember the story of Alina, a Sagittarius writer whose partner adored her but felt threatened by the time and space her creativity required. At first, it was small, suggesting she take fewer weekend writing retreats, questioning whether she really needed to spend late nights on her manuscript. She cut back to make the relationship easier, telling herself it was temporary. Months turned into years, and one day she realized she hadn't written anything meaningful in nearly 3. The love had not ended, but her own light had dimmed so much she barely recognized herself. The cage was made of silk, soft, beautiful, and nearly invisible, but it was a cage nonetheless. The tragedy of the silk cage is that it teaches you to cooperate with your own confinement. Because it doesn't scream danger, you don't instinctively fight it. You rationalize it. You tell yourself you're compromising for love, that this is what commitment looks like. And in small doses, compromise is part of any healthy bond. But when compromise becomes a pattern of silencing your deepest instincts, when it means you stop answering the call of your own expansion, it is no longer love. It is fear dressed as care. Sagittarius, real love does not fear your wings. It does not try to ground you out of insecurity. It does not measure your worth by how much of yourself you can trim away to fit into someone else's comfort zone. True love, whether romantic, platonic, or even the love of family, wants to see you rise, even if your flight carries you farther than they imagined. It trusts that your freedom does not mean abandonment. It celebrates your victories, even the ones you achieve without them at your side. When you find yourself in a silk cage, the signs are subtle but unmistakable. You might start declining invitations that would light you up, because you know they'd make someone else uneasy. You might stop speaking passionately about your goals because you're tired of defending them. You might notice that you smile more politely and laugh less freely. And most telling of all, you begin to dream smaller, not because you've lost the capacity to dream, but because you've convinced yourself that smaller dreams are easier to keep. Breaking free from this cage is not about rebellion for rebellion's sake. It is about reclaiming the parts of yourself you set aside for the sake of harmony. And here's the hard truth. Sometimes the person who built the cage with you will not understand why you need to leave it. They may feel hurt, even betrayed, because they believe they've been protecting you. But you cannot live your life as a thank you to someone else's fear. You must live it as an act of devotion to your own soul. This doesn't always mean ending the relationship or walking away entirely. Sometimes it means having the courage to name the cage out loud, to say I love you but I can't keep cutting my wings to fit inside your idea of safety. It means setting boundaries not to push someone out, but to make space for both of you to grow. And yes, it means risking discomfort, conflict, and change. But Sagittarius, you are not a stranger to risk. You know that every leap into the unknown carries both danger and wonder. And you have always been willing to leap. When you step outside the silk cage, something remarkable happens. The air feels different, not just because you have space, but because you remember how much of yourself there is to bring into the world. The horizon that once felt like a painting comes alive again. Your laughter returns, unmeasured and uncontained. You find yourself walking taller, speaking with more certainty, and feeling the pulse of adventure that has always been your birthright. Love, when it is real, will meet you out there in the open under the wide sky. It will run beside you, not hold your hand back. It will want you to be bigger, brighter, freer than you were yesterday. And when you find that kind of love, you will see the silk cage for what it was. Not a safe haven, but a beautiful illusion you no longer need. Gate 4. The moment you choose yourself instead of waiting to be chosen. There comes a point, Sagittarius, when the waiting is no longer romantic. It becomes a quiet kind of grief. In the beginning, you tell yourself that patience is love. You say they just need more time. They'll understand me eventually. They'll show up when it matters. You keep the door open, keep the coffee warm, keep the faith alive because you believe in loyalty, in the beauty of seeing something through. But there is a difference between believing in someone and putting your life on hold for them. And one day, without fanfare, you realize the truth. They are not running late. They are walking a different road entirely. This realization doesn't always arrive with a burst of anger. More often, it slips in quietly, like the soft light of morning. You see a message left unanswered for days, and it no longer stings, you just understand. You notice the way your laughter feels lighter when they're not in the room. You catch yourself imagining futures in which they are absent, and instead of panic, you feel peace. That's when you know you've been waiting for someone to meet you in the place you've been standing, but they've never even set out toward you. For Sagittarius, the act of choosing yourself can feel foreign at first. You are the giver, the wanderer who carries extra maps in case someone else needs them. You know how to love through distance, misunderstanding, even silence. But there comes a moment when that love begins to cost you pieces of your own light, and no amount of patience will bring them back. That is the moment you must remember that your loyalty belongs first to your soul. I recall the story of Elias, a Sagittarius who had been in love with someone for years. They were never quite together, yet never fully apart. There was always a promise, unspoken but implied, that one day they'd choose him. And so he waited. He dated other people half-heartedly, turned down opportunities that might take him too far away, always keeping one part of his life open for them. One afternoon, sitting in a cafe, he watched the rain slide down the window and realized he couldn't remember the last time they'd asked how he was. Really. Not the polite check-in, but the real deep listening that love requires. And in that moment, without bitterness, he knew. I've been holding space for someone who has never truly stepped inside it. He paid for his coffee, walked into the rain, and chose himself. Choosing yourself is not about slamming the door. It's about gently, deliberately, turning the handle and stepping through it. It's about no longer asking, will they come? But instead asking, where am I going? It's shifting from waiting for their arrival to preparing for your own departure into a life that feels full and alive. The danger of waiting too long is that you begin to measure your worth by someone else's recognition. You start to believe that the proof of your value will come the day they finally choose you. But Sagittarius, your worth was never up for debate. It is not a prize to be awarded. It is the ground you stand on, the fire in your chest, the arrow in your hand. To wait indefinitely for someone else to validate it is to live in a constant state of almost arrival, almost joy, almost life. When you choose yourself, you stop living in almost. You stop checking the door. You stop tailoring your schedule, your dreams, your heartbeats to the rhythm of someone else's hesitation. You begin to move in time with your own soul again. And that rhythm is strong, steady, and unstoppable. Of course, choosing yourself can be misunderstood. Some will call it selfish. Some will accuse you of giving up too soon. Some will suggest that you just didn't love enough. But here is the truth. Choosing yourself is the deepest act of love you can offer. Because when you are whole, your love for others becomes cleaner, freer, and more true. It no longer comes with the unspoken demand to be chosen in return. This choice will change the way you carry yourself. You will no longer seek their gaze for confirmation before you take a step. You will no longer hold your breath waiting for them to say, I see you. You will see yourself fully, unapologetically, and in that self-seeing, the need for their validation dissolves. You may still love them. You may still wish them well. But you will no longer give them the keys to your becoming. For a Sagittarius, this is liberation. It is the moment you remember that your path is not meant to be walked in hesitation. You were born to move toward the horizon, to follow the arrow of your truth wherever it leads. And sometimes that means walking alone for a while. But here's the secret. When you choose yourself, you are never truly alone. You are accompanied by the fullness of your own spirit. And that is a companionship no one can take from you. So when the moment comes, when you feel that shift inside, when the waiting feels heavier than the leaving, trust it. Step into your own life without apology. Let the horizon open before you again. Because Sagittarius, you were never meant to be chosen like a prize. You were meant to choose yourself like a destiny. Conclusion: the flame that never goes out. In the end, Sagittarius, the truth was never only about what they kept from you. It was about the ways you had been keeping yourself from yourself. You silenced your intuition to keep the peace. You turned away from signs because you feared what they would require of you. You let love, gentle as it seemed, clip your wings. You waited to be chosen, forgetting that you had the power to choose yourself all along. And yet here you are, still standing, still breathing, still carrying that wild, unbroken fire inside. The truths you faced have not destroyed you. They have burned away the illusions, the cages, the hesitations, until only what is real remains. And what is real is this: you are whole. You are worthy. You are free. The flame within you does not fade when the world grows dark. It does not vanish when someone turns away. It is not dependent on who stays or who leaves. That flame is yours alone, fueled by your courage, your honesty, and your unshakable faith in the road ahead. Even when the path feels uncertain, even when the fog returns, you now know you have a compass that will never fail you. This is not the ending of a love story. It is the beginning of your sovereignty. It is the moment you take the bow back into your own hands and aim, not toward someone else's approval, but toward the life your soul has been calling you toward all along. If these words have found a home in your heart, let them travel further. Share them. Let them reach someone who needs this reminder today. Subscribe, stay close, and walk with me. The road is long, the sky is wide, and your arrow is ready.